This is the Sean Miller Podcast, presented by Deer Park Roofing. Now, here's your hosts, Paul Fritchner and Adam Baum.
Welcome into episode 19 of the Sean Miller Podcast. Paul Fritchner, Adam Baum with you today. It's just the two of us, and we'll get to that in a minute. But before we start, we have to thank our sponsors, the presenting sponsor of the Sean Miller Podcast, Deer Park Roofing, as well as the official payroll sponsor of the Sean Miller Podcast, our friends at Payroll Partners. And as always, thanks to TGE Solar, all of you for helping make this possible. To start off the top, 10,000 subscribers for the Sean Miller Podcast, Adam.
Thank you. Wow, it's crazy. When we started this, we had, goals, things that we wanted to accomplish, and 10,000 subscribers in year one was not really on the radar. So
I don't think it was on the radar for either of us. We had a number much lower than that I think we were trying to manage our expectations for the year. But thanks to everybody that has subscribed so far. You can find us on all social media platforms at Sean Miller Pod. You can find us on YouTube, which is where you're watching this right now. Make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to this in audio form, a lot of you have already left a rating and a review already, but just go ahead and tap that rating. It helps us out, helps the algorithm out and all of that. But like I said, it's just the two of us on the episode today. We had a podcast scheduled earlier this week with Sean and a guest, but due to some scheduling conflicts, that wasn't able to happen. We're recording this on Saturday afternoon. The team has already left for Marquette. So just because of the travel schedule, the last couple of days coming off that Providence game on Wednesday, we just weren't able to reschedule and make it happen. But we didn't want to leave you hanging without an episode. And I think this gives us an opportunity, Adam, here in episode 19 of the show to talk a little bit about our background, where we have come from to get to this point in hosting the Sean Miller Podcast.
Who are these idiots?
Who are these guys that are sitting up here and have been talking to us for the last 3 months? Because we put out an Ask Me Anything on Twitter yesterday, and we asked for some questions, and we're going to be getting to that at the second half of the show. So we had a ton of great questions in from everybody that asking everything under the sun that you could want to know from us. So we're going to get to that, but we did have a question or two as to say, hey, why don't you take a second and tell us about your guys' backgrounds and maybe where you got to. And I went back and realized that, starting from episode 1, if you are just listening to this, you might be wondering, why are these two guys hosting this show? Who are these guys? Adam, I'm going to start with you. Who are you?
Who am I? That's a great question. That's a deep question, Paul. We could devote a few weeks to that, and I don't know that we would ever get there. But no, I think the way that this podcast came together, and I guess we'll get to that. It's just, I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be, Paul, which is a reassuring place to be, and a play to feel that way feels really nice. But, I'm a local guy, Cincinnati, born and raised, West Side. Shout out Michael Witt. But ever since I can remember, I've always been around sports. I started out playing them. And then at some point it became clear, you got to stop playing these things. And maybe that's not a decision that I made. Maybe it's a decision the world made for me. But I got pretty lucky. My senior year of high school, I took a journalism class. And the very next year, I got a job at the Cincinnati Enquirer. And I was basically just answering phones, taking box scores. And slowly but surely over time, they let me start writing stories. Starting out, it was stuff that no one else wanted to write. I'm not going to begrudge any local sports or area teams, but it was just hey, no one else is going to do this. Do you want to do it? And I always said yes. And that sort of snowballed. I got some positive momentum, really fell in love with it. And then I got to start covering high school sports here in Cincinnati full time. I did that for about 7 years. And then I got promoted to the Xavier Musketeers beat, and my life forever changed because I got to meet Paul Fritchner. And a fun story, my first year on the beat, Paul was still a student here. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember this. The first game I ever covered was Musketeer Madness. In this lanky, prepubescent looking...
I still am. 27, I still am.
He comes up to me before the game, and he's like, hey, are you Adam? And I was like, yeah, I'm Adam. And he was like, I'm Paul. I do some, social media stuff. I'm studying, broadcasting and sports
I was
communications.
doing sport management. I was doing PR, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And you asked me to be in a video with you. We recorded it in the courtside club downstairs. So that was my first interaction with young Paul Fritchner.
Oh man, I forgot all about that. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I completely forgot about that. That was great.
We were connected on day one here.
That's right.
Yeah. But so I got to cover the team for the Enquirer for 5 years. It was super rewarding. And then, this past off season, a new career opportunity popped up and I felt like it was worth pursuing. So I left the newspaper. And then, a few months after that, this sort of popped onto my radar. And I was like, what a great way to stay around the program and still be involved in sports. So it kind of worked out perfectly, in my opinion, because here we are now. We're sitting up here. We're 19 episodes into this thing. And I feel like we've created something really cool.
So you spent 16 years at the Enquirer,
16.
Right?
I'm significantly older than Paul. Some people might be shocked to hear that, but yeah, I got him by 9 years.
It is funny how many times I get asked, are you still a student? Are you graduated? What's the situation here? I know I project that I'm, 18, 19, but I am 27.
Yeah.
Where everything's above board here, 27. But yeah, I mean, it's been great over these last few months in developing this. And when the idea was pitched to me and to say, hey, Paul, we want you to come aboard. We want you to help host the Sean Miller podcast alongside Adam, seeing the buy-in. We've talked about this on other shows. I host a daily show called The Rebound Rundown. We did an episode back in November about that and kind of the background of this, but we've never really talked on this platform about the background of the Sean Miller podcast. And when the idea was pitched to me, one, to work alongside Sean and yourself, and then two, everybody behind the scenes that was supporting this, I mean, it was a no-brainer. And the other thing, too, was what it gave us the ability to do even outside of just coming in here once a week and recording the show, being able to cover the team, being able to travel, being able to get content, do all those fun things that you were already doing and now doing it in a different media style. I mean, how have you liked that branching out? I know you want to, I know the writing is still kind of on the back burner and we hopefully have some more news about that soon.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But but how is this new media going in front of the camera, Ben? It's
definitely different. I don't know that I'll ever fully be comfortable with it like the way you are, because this is what you were brought up doing. Like I remember when during COVID, one of my favorite stories I ever got to write was when the Fox broadcast got canceled for a Xavier men's basketball game because of a COVID outbreak, literally like an hour before tip.
Yeah.
And I got to interview you about, stepping in and Xavier putting on their own broadcast at the last minute. And I think like remembering that and talking to you about that and seeing how that unfolded, like you were born for this, whereas I was born to be like a byline, like a name on a story. But I feel like it's very cool to venture into different areas that are maybe outside of your comfort zone. And you've been extremely helpful, just making me more comfortable. And I think when I was writing, it would be like every once in a while I'd get to do like a TV interview or someone would have me on their podcast as a guest. But it's like every week we're sitting up here with Sean Miller and we're talking to him. And it's one of those things where I can talk to anyone. I essentially made a career out of developing relationships and talking to people, but now it's like those conversations they're for an audience.
Sure.
Which is, it's definitely different, something that I'm still sort of figuring it out, but it's been cool to get to share this with you.
And one of the best parts about working with you and doing this has been how easy it's been with Sean and you helping facilitate everything. I mean, you developed a great relationship with him last year in his first year back at Xavier and still writing for the Enquirer and what you guys would talk about after the game and everything like that and how much he trusted you now this year to be able to coordinate all these interviews and do things, which I know is stressful. Adam is the one behind the scenes doing a lot of the coordinating for times and schedules and interviews and everything like that. And Adam will come back into the office one day or he'll say, man, I spent this much time at Xavier trying to coordinate something and it fell through or whatever it might be. But it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's been going back to that story about the COVID broadcast and everything else. There have been so many benchmarks along the way of being around the Big East for myself and around Xavier and things that it feels like even at 27, I've been really, really fortunate and I don't want to say lucky. I never like to use the word lucky. I hate that word because lucky implies that you were just maybe in the right place at the right time. But the way I see it, you work hard enough to put yourself in those positions, right? You're fortunate. That's what I like to say. I don't like to say lucky. I like to say fortunate because you work 16 years at the Enquirer to develop relationships and trust with people that when your time at the Enquirer finished, you had somebody behind the scenes, even outside of the sports industry, trust you and realize that we could put this product together and turn it into what it's become here in the last 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
And honestly, the reason I brought up that story I wrote about you and Schmaltzy was because Schmaltz told me something when I interviewed him for that story, and it was in reference to you. And it was like, you know, Paul, when he was a student here, and Schmaltz has been around forever, and he's been doing broadcasts, and he's been around the program. And he was basically like, yeah, Paul just started asking me to do stuff. And I thought that was a great like indication of why you're here today, is that you went out of your way to almost force yourself into this, to like seize opportunities that were only available to you because you were like willing to ask.
Yeah.
So I think that was a cool thing to realize on my end. And honestly, that was a big reason why I was super excited about this, because I was like, Paul will work for this. He'll bleed for this.
That's right. Yeah. So a little bit of background on me. I grew up in Northern Virginia, not originally from here. I'm born and raised in Northern Virginia, about 15 miles outside of DC. I grew up, though, with family here in Cincinnati. My entire mom's side of the family is from here in Cincinnati. So over winter break or Thanksgiving, Easter, summers, it was always going back to Cincinnati. I grew up on Skyline. I grew up on the whole deal. So while I didn't actually live in Cincinnati, I was very familiar with Cincinnati growing up. And over Christmas break, my grandma went to Edgecliff. So that was the women's college before it merged with Xavier, when Xavier was still all male. My granddad went to Xavier, graduated back in the 50s. And my uncle, who lives with us still now, has Down syndrome. So my granddad had season tickets. He had 2 season tickets. And over winter break, he would give his tickets to my dad and I, and we would take my Uncle Jim, and we'd just get a spare ticket for me. The ushers were super nice. I mean, I was, however small I was, they just pull up an extra chair next to us. And we would sit down there in the handicap section, right down, I don't know what section number it is, but Jim, diehard Xavier fan.
Great guy. I've got to meet him.
Great guy. Uncle Jim is the best. Uncle Jim is the best. They still have season tickets. My grandma and my grandpa have since passed away, but since college, I came to Xavier in 2015, moved back. My family moved back here too. And then in 2019, I graduated from Xavier. Xavier was the only school I applied to. I looked at other schools. I knew I always wanted to go into broadcasting, but Xavier allowed me the opportunity to get in right away. You look at, Syracuse, Northwestern, Missouri, a lot of these big, prominent, Arizona State, a lot of these prominent big broadcasting schools, you got to wait your turn. You got to wait till you're a junior or a senior and maybe you get on the air. But at Xavier, I knew I was going to have the opportunity right away. So by Labor Day of my freshman year, 2-3 weeks in, I got hired in the athletic department. Patrick Dillon and Brendan Bergen hired me here. And since then, I always joke that I just kept showing up and nobody's ever changed the locks. And I just keep showing up around here. And it's been a lot of fun. It really has. In this very niche community of Xavier basketball, I have built something with everybody that listens to this and the rapport with the fans that come up, whether it's at a promotion in between timeouts. I mean, even doing the on-court MC thing, that was just the marketing department asked for a fill-in this winter after I graduated. So the 1920 season, they were needing another person. And I just said, hey, stick a microphone in front of my face. I'm probably going to find some words to say.
They were like, we need a dude with an arm that can reach the upper deck with the Joseph Auto Group ball toss.
Yeah. And, and so now it's turned into doing that and having fun during games. And from there, it spiraled into hosting this show 4 years later and the relationships I've developed around the Big East. I mean, like I said, been super fortunate to do a lot of very, very cool things, cover the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden, travel to the NCAA tournament, whether it's with Xavier or other teams representing the Big East. Been a lot of very interesting stories that you hear along the way, and now to be here, sitting here doing this with you, I think hopefully that gives fans a little background on us and where we've come from. If people care to hear about us for the last 10 minutes, then hopefully that's enlightening to it. But again, a couple of guys that are very familiar here around Cincinnati, and now here we are.
I'm in awe of your success, Paul. Like, to overcome a peanut allergy at a young age, the way that you have, it's honestly remarkable. I'm just proud of you, really.
God gives his hardest battles to his strongest warriors. Peanut allergy, that's got to be up there on the list, right?
Yeah, you've overcome a lot recently. I mean, if you guys don't follow Paul on social media, his poor car,
it conked out.
It died in the drive-through after you had already ordered, right?
Yep.
So you put in an order, you started to pull forward, and then the car died during peak lunch hour.
The manager was not happy with me.
Not
happy.
But this is just a sign of like how well you handle adversity, and I'm honored to be up here with you.
One thing I do want to say about that too, and you mentioned Mike Schmaltz, and Mike Schmaltz has been a major factor in my career here at Xavier. He's a broadcaster that, if you don't know Mike, if you ever listen to a game that's not men's basketball, Mike has broadcasted women's basketball here for over 20 years. He and I broadcast baseball together, men's and women's soccer, volleyball, any sport. Now it's women's lacrosse too, if we have the opportunity to do that. Any sport that's not men's basketball, he and I have broadcasted together. And we started broadcasting, or I got on the air my spring of my freshman year, and he and I, since then. And that was one of the craziest experiences of my life. Were you were in the building? Were you allowed?
Oh, yeah.
You were in the building.
I was allowed. I was in here. But.
Yeah, you were there. And we got a call that the Fox truck had COVID, and I was sitting there with Mike. We were one of the few people that were working that game, and it was in the first 2 or 3 games of the COVID season.
Yeah, it was during that Xavier Invitational that they hosted. I forget, it was like Toledo,
Bradley,
Oakland. And Oakland.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I got a call and said, hey, the Fox broadcast is canceled. And my job at the time was being basically the liaison between the truck and the officials, the timeout coordinator, for those of you that know what that is. And so I said, well, if there's no broadcast, do I even need to come? But I was already a mile away. So I was like, well, I'll just show up, and hey, you know what? Maybe they need a broadcaster. And I walked in, I said, Mike and I can do this.
Yeah.
We did. On about 15 minutes notice, they got approval from the Big East that we could broadcast that game. And it's a memory that no matter what happens throughout the rest of my broadcast career on a play-by-play side, I've been fortunate enough to do that. And it was a lot of fun. And again, Mike's a great guy, and I have a lot of thanks to give him and that I owe to him.
Shout out Schmaltzy. Everything's fine. But also on, a tangent from that is I wrote the story about this happening, and I got 2 of my favorite fans in Selden and Marianne, Paul's parents. They're
the best.
They are the best.
Marianne is a dedicated paper reader of the Cincinnati Enquirer still every day. She always would. Baum wrote a great story today. And the best part was, it'd be the printed edition that's like a day or 2 after the online edition.
Mom,
she's going, did you read this?
I read it 48 hours ago. Wow.
Your mom's the same way, right?
Oh, yeah. My mom loves it.
Oh, yeah.
Now I've had to sort of teach her about the podcast game and show her how YouTube works and how to listen to a podcast on Spotify. So that's been an adventure and a journey in and of itself.
Yeah. Baum, just before we get to the AMA part of this podcast, from your perspective now of where you were last season and covering the team with the Enquirer, and now what we've done this season, I know it's very different seasons on the court, but just what we have seen, you and I are privileged to be able to go to practice, and we can't really talk about what we see in practice. That's part of us being allowed in the building, is not being able to talk about it, but just from a general sense, you know, we're in the building every day. We see what these guys have to overcome from an adversity standpoint, how they practice versus then how they play. And, you know, I'd just love to hear your perspective on what this season has been like and some of these challenges that this team has overcome.
Yeah, it's almost, it's crazy to me how much can change in 1 year. And I know that like people are so sick of excuses, but in a way, this team was snake bit in the summer. Like you lose Zach and Jerome, and the whole picture of what this season could be, it instantly changes, right? You know, so I think from my perspective, last year you had this lineup, like these 7 guys. It was like, man, these guys are experienced. They've played together. They know how to. Really, the only guys that you mixed in last year were Sule and Dez, and everyone else had great familiarity with each other. And then you add Sean in there, and Sean has a plan how he wants to play. And it felt like last year the train got rolling, and it never really stopped rolling. This year, it has felt like the train never really got rolling because of some injuries and things that happened. And then it's like, okay, then you kind of got the train on the tracks. And then it's been derailed. And then it's been back on the tracks. And now it's like, are they going to get it all the way back on the tracks? But I think to the players' credit, to the coaching staff's credit, they have not changed from day one. Like you can, to me, coming to watching practice yesterday, everyone in that gym out there, it felt like they still cared the same way they did in August or September or October. And I think that's something that not all fans are privy to, but because a lot of fans, you know, you live and die with losses, and you live and die with decisions that maybe happen at the end of a game or whatever. And you're so hung up on the end result. Yeah. And I get that. I understand that. But like, if you could see what they go through to try to win a basketball game, I think you would have a very different appreciation for even a close loss or losing by 43 at UConn. Like, a lot goes into it that people don't get to see.
I think to your point, that was the only thing I would really add to that is that from what you see, and maybe what the fans listening to this don't see at practice, it doesn't seem to me like this team has an attitude problem, right? Every day they bring it. They practice hard. They practice well. They buy in. It's just that a lot of these teams that they have run into just quite simply have been better teams on the court and have taken it to them night in and night out in a Big East. And that's what you're going to run into when you're playing the reigning national champions and you're playing, you know, all these talented teams, Purdue, Houston, and the rest. It's just kind of how it's broken down this season for Xavier.
Yeah. And, you know, I think like one thing that's going to be nice is like last year, I know Zach got hurt, and, you know, that was a wrench that got thrown in sort of midway through the season. Jerome ends up coming in and playing really well in his place. But like, for the most part, last year was the season where like everything pretty much went according to plan, with that being the one caveat. This year has been a season where not a lot has gone according to plan. And I'd very much like to see a season in the near future where it's like, you don't have these hiccups, these roadblocks that sort of hinder what you can be. So that'd be good to see.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's the AMA portion of Adam and Paul's podcast here on the Sean Miller Podcast. We'll be right back. The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Deer Park Roofing, a company that's provided elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. Whether your needs are residential or commercial, like the outstanding work on the Cintas Center, the home of Xavier basketball, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is protect what's important, and what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com. Stop renting your power, own it. TGE Solar makes it easy to purchase solar panels for your home or business so you can take control of your monthly electricity bill and start saving today. They'll help you find the best solar system to meet your needs, and their expert in-house installation team makes the process seamless. They're proud to be based in Cincinnati, family owned and operated by a Xavier alum. mention this podcast and save $1,000. Visit TGESolar.com to request your free energy evaluation today. Welcome back to the Sean Miller Podcast. It's time for the AMA, Ask Me Anything portion of the show. And to set the table for this segment, one of the most frequent questions that we got was on Sean's future here at Xavier. And all we can tell you is what we heard last week on the show, last week on this podcast. If you want to go back and listen to that, you can. And just Sean talking about what he wants to do in building the future of this program. So that's all that we know, and that's all that we can tell you. But I just wanted to start this segment off by saying that, since that was one of the most frequently asked things that we had in our mentions. But I'm going to go through. We had several questions asked about guests or future guests of the show, and maybe some logistical questions of what's going to happen. So I'm going to try and give as many username shout outs as I can. But since a lot of them were asked multiple times, we'll just go ahead and address them. I had some questions on, like I said, guests. You know, who's your white whale guest? What kind of guests do you want to have on? Can you ever get Sean's dad on the show? We have tried desperately to get John Miller on the show. I'm holding out hope that that's going to happen.
There's a plan. We have a plan in place, and I'm confident that we can make it happen.
Adam, Matthew Clayton asked, who is your white whale guest?
This is so interesting to me because, like, I think everyone's probably going to have a different answer. I think from my time covering the team and the people I got to interview and just purely who I found interesting, like, I think Tu Holloway is so interesting. I just think the way he thinks, the way he talks, the way he played basketball, I would love to get him on a podcast with Sean.
Yeah, I was going through trying to think of some of the people that are outside of the box and maybe outside of the Xavier universe, because I think within the Xavier universe, Tu Holloway and David West are the two that frequently come to mind. And I feel pretty confident that at some point they're going to appear on the show. Now, as far as a white whale guest goes, I'd love to have them on in person.
Yeah.
Because I think there is something that is lost in translation when you do it virtually. And that's just natural. That's just how it is when you're able to look somebody in the eye sitting here like we're doing right now. But if those guys are able to make it back to campus and we're able to record in person, those would be episodes that I think every Xavier fan would tune in immediately to listen to.
And I guess we could say like Xavier white whale and then non-Xavier white whale.
Okay, so those would be probably my two answers, which I feel, like I said, I feel confident that at some point in some capacity they will be on the show. Outside of Xavier, you know, that's a good question. Do you have a thought?
I mean, this is one that we've talked about.
Yeah.
I'd love to get Bill Raftery on.
Yeah.
You know, Bill was responsible for one of the most legendary college basketball calls, and it involves Sean Miller.
Yeah. Well,
so
I would say Bill and Jerome Lane.
Yeah.
Those two together to do an episode, to put all three of them on the same show that's something that we've talked about too. Yeah. And hopefully we can make happen one day. But that is an episode that I'd love to do outside of just Xavier.
But the possibilities are really endless because of everyone that Sean knows in the basketball community. Like, you could go down the list of big time Arizona players, other active college basketball head coaches. Like, those are all things that we're talking about and discussing. And I think the offseason, there's another question about this that I'm sure we'll get to. Like, the offseason is going to present some opportunities.
Yeah, I think we can just go ahead and say it right now. We had a question in from Johnny, I believe, about the offseason and what that entails. We're going to be doing shows throughout the offseason. We're still going to be doing
year-round
episodes.
Baby.
This is a year-round podcast. And to be honest, I think the offseason might be even maybe more interesting than it is in the season, because we're going to be able to coordinate schedules and it's going to be easier. And obviously you're going to have to work around recruiting and everything else, but it's going to be a lot easier to get some of these guys on the show and do some of these guests that maybe are other coaches or people that just can't do it during the season.
Yeah. And I think, like, to Sean's credit, he's appeared on 17 of the 19 episodes that we've done. And those have all basically been from October during the season. And so I think once the season ends, the roster stuff happens, like I think he's going to be in a better place to actually like sit down and do a lot of these, and it'll be on us to make them good.
Yep. Paula asks, not sure if you'll address this, but my conspiracy theory is the Big East made Xavier the sacrificial lamb versus Purdue and Houston instead of UConn, Marquette, or Creighton, with a laughing emoji. Thoughts? Obviously, one question that has come up a lot throughout the season, and Sean's talked a lot about the schedule. You know, those are games that were scheduled before Zach Fremantle and Jerome Hunter were hurt. Now, was I a little surprised that Xavier got Houston and Purdue? Or are you thinking maybe that Xavier gets Houston and then Rutgers, or you get Purdue and then, I don't want to say TCU because they've already played TCU, but, you know, a Kansas State or one of those instead of Purdue and Houston?
And let's be honest. I understand how people feel about this, but like UConn had to go play at Kansas. Marquette had to go play in the Maui Invitational, and a lot of people said that it was the best Maui Invitational field of all time. Like, those are all factors that go into play when I think you're trying to figure out how to make these matchups work, because it's not easy.
Impractical X-Fan asks 2 questions. 1, do you guys envision a Big East referee ever being a guest on the podcast?
Dear God, I hope so.
I hope so.
I don't think they'd be.
I don't think so either.
I don't think they'd be open to it, just because like they have to deal with Sean for 40 minutes during a game, and I'm sure that's a terrifying prospect. If he gets him up here in a public platform where he can ask them anything, and then that's going to live forever, I don't know that anyone's going to be
There's
brave
no
enough.
chance.
Yeah. Now, I would love to have them on. I have some questions myself. Everyone knows my thoughts on the referees, and I understand that it's a very difficult job. It's not easy. They're very well compensated for this. And that nothing.
You would like some answers.
I enjoy nothing more than ragging on the officials. It's like, okay, you got paid handsomely to do this game. You're going to go somewhere and do a game tomorrow and get paid handsomely again. I will take whatever shots I can take at you on the internet. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
He also wants to know, why didn't they juggle little Cuties brand clementines in the manager's episode? Might have missed a sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah, that was something that we did not know was going to happen. Isaac Feely, the manager who you saw who can juggle, he just went out of his way to bring 6 tennis balls up here, I think hoping that was going to happen. But what I will say is, you know, I'm essentially like a Cuties spokesperson. They have sent me free merch. I would love to get them involved in the podcast, maybe for some sort of a sponsorship opportunity. I think that would make me the happiest person in the world. And next time there's juggling, there will be cuties here.
Cutie juggling. David asks, if you could take one Xavier player from the past and place them on this year's roster, who would it be and why? I will not give the cop-out answer of David West. I will go.
I've had that same thought.
Okay.
But I'm going to go Tyrone Hill. I'm going to go the second most dominant big man that I can think of. David's obviously number 1. Tyrone Hill or Derek Strong probably. Like this team desperately needs like size and physicality and dudes that can score around the rim.
I'll go a little different.
Okay.
I'll go more modern. James Farr.
Yeah.
I think they could use a James Farr type on this team.
Or even like, I've talked to people about this. Do you want to know one of the reasons why Xavier was so tough last year? It's because they had a 7-footer that could shoot and could play defense and defend the rim. And that changes your team so much. I
know.
Like at Kalkbrenner, you just pull him away from the basket. He has to come out and respect a 7-footer that can shoot the ball. Like, that'd be nice.
All right. 3 questions from Dan, and they're all great. Power rank the 3 Xavier teams that made the Elite 8. So that would have been 2004, 2008, and 2017. Power rank the 3 Xavier teams that made the Elite 8.
This is like a Paul question, to be honest.
Yeah, I look back at that 2008 team that lost to UCLA, and just something really sticks out in my head, because if you think back to the team that lost to Duke in 2004, it's like every one of those teams had their special moments, and they had what made them great, obviously, to be able to make it to the Elite Eight. I would probably say the 2004 team. I don't know if I would. This is tough because you remember everything that happened down the stretch there, the run to then get into the Elite Eight. I really, really like that 2008 team that ended up losing to UCLA. I'm going to say 2008, 2017 with Trayvon and JP and the rest, and then 2004 with the caveat that I did not watch the 2004 run live. I have only ever seen it in the run documentary. So if there are older fans that are listening to this screaming at their car right now or pounding their computer screen as you listen to me say that, that's probably how I'd go.
The great thing about that question is you could drag Xavier fans in here and ask them, and you'd get a lot of different answers.
Yeah. Number 2, favorite Xavier game day uniforms.
The Running Mans.
Okay.
The white Running Mans.
The white Running Mans.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have been more specific.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah. They're just too nice.
I have a take, though.
The Grays.
I have a... No, not the Grays. Not the Grays. Not the Grays. I do have a take on the Running Mans, though. And this is not going to be a super popular take, but I have a take. I love the Power X. And when they put, like last year in the Big East Tournament Championship game, you know, the logo on the graphic on the TV, on the Fox broadcast was the Running Man logo. There's something so cool to me about the X. I love the X. And the Running Man logo is great. And the uniforms are great. But, you know, when you go on the broadcast and you're turning on the game, I love seeing the X. And to me, that white Xavier, just the home white Xavier uniform with and it's kind of the same way where you look at the court. You know, everybody wanted to talk about the Skyline court and how cool that Skyline court was, and then they went to the court that they have now. There's just something so sleek about the navy blue border and the way that it's played now. But outside of that, our producer Josh loves the black uniforms. We haven't seen those in a long time. When was the last time? I can't even remember.
I feel
when
like
the last
they wore
time.
them on the road recently.
How many hats does Adam Baum own?
Yeah, I saw this question and I went out of my way not to wear a hat today. I wanted to throw off Dan, but I have an absurd amount of hats. And my hats are broken into 2 categories. They're hats that I can sweat in and hats that I don't want to sweat in. So I would say I probably have upwards of 50 to 75 hats.
That is insane.
And I look good in hats.
Can't deny that.
Yeah, but I do have to protect this dome from the sun. The sun is making its return. And, you could get a roof also protects you from the sun. Shout out to Deer Park Roofing. And TGE Solar harnesses the power of the sun. Shout out TGE Solar.
We're sitting under a Deer Park roof right now.
Yeah, we are.
If the Big East were to expand to 16, the Big East were to expand to 16 teams, which programs would each of you target as additions? So the Big East is at 11 right now. You'd have to get 5 more. Who would it be? Geography is not a problem.
No geography problems. Okay. Maybe I'm unpopular in this, but I wouldn't add anyone. I like the true round robin, but I understand the spirit of the question and this is where college sports is headed. So I love that you threw this to me first.
You want me to go first? I can go first.
Yeah, go first.
I have 5. Okay. The caveat is you absolutely do not get rid of the double round robin because it is just such a purist form of basketball, and everybody gets to play everybody twice. You get a chance at your arena and you get a chance at their arena, and there is nothing better in the country than going to Madison Square Garden, having seen all of these teams twice, and getting a chance at a third time at a neutral site in the best arena in the world. The way that it is currently constructed in the Big East is second to none, and the only way you add another team is if, one, somebody leaves and you can keep the double round robin by just slotting another team in there, or you're able to somehow figure it out. The coaches are not going to want to give up 2 more non-conference games to go to 22. That's massive. So you keep it at where it is right now. where I would go 5 more teams. I would bring Syracuse back.
I thought of them.
I would bring Louisville into the fold. I would bring Notre Dame. I would bring Gonzaga. And I would bring, I'm trying to think of one more. Do you have any that maybe I'm forgetting?
I mean, the ones I was thinking about were Syracuse, Notre Dame, and Gonzaga, and I never really got further than that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
4 out of 5.
It's a tough, like, because I think about it from a standpoint of, the matchups are really good right now in the Big East, rivalry type stuff. Like Syracuse would fit right into that.
Would you go to a Wake Forest?
Maybe.
Something like that. So get a Carolina involved.
Yeah, that could be a good one.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here because you keep it where it is right now at 11. All right. We're going to keep moving on. What time is too early to practice?
I've not within the last 2 years, so not Sean Miller, but I've been to a 7 a.m. Xavier practice before.
Matthew asked that question.
That's too early, in my opinion. Also, you could throw that question on its head and ask too late. I've been to some late Xavier practices too that have been the second practice of the night, if you catch my drift.
Beans asks, what lifetime stats do you wish you could see?
Clementine's consumed. That'd be a good one.
Okay. Words written?
Words written. That'd be a good. Golf balls lost and golf balls found.
I'm so sick of losing golf balls, dude.
I'm great at finding golf balls that aren't mine, though. Like, I'm elite at that.
I'm so sick of it. People want to give me, brand new golf balls. You buy a new sleeve of golf balls. They're gone.
Steps taken.
You take a lot of steps.
Total steps taken throughout your life. That'd be wild.
I'd love a Skyline Coney's consumed.
Oh, yeah. I thought you might go that direction.
I would love a Skyline Coney's consumed.
Paul eats more Skyline than anyone ever seen. Honestly, the only thing that's shocking to me is that your car died at Burger King and not Skyline.
I know.
If it would have died at Skyline, it would have been way more fitting than Burger King, in my opinion.
I know. Favorite Xavier player and favorite game that you've seen in person?
So my answers are going to be way different than Paul's on this because this is my 6th year around the program. What was it? Favorite Xavier player?
Favorite Xavier player and favorite game that you've seen in person?
Favorite game that I've seen in person might be down in Charleston, Xavier and UConn. That was a wild game. The other one that was really cool to me was Colby Jones's game winner against Providence.
Yep.
I love that one. And like an honorable mention one for me would be Kennesaw State because I got to sit right next to Paul during that game, and he looked like he was on the verge of a panic attack for the whole game. And on top, to make matters worse, he sat there and we were hearing the Kennesaw State fight song, and he's like, I will never get the. At the time, it looked like Xavier was going to lose, to be fair. But Paul was like, this song is going to haunt me forever.
It had been so long since they'd been in the tournament.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there looking at you going, is it over this fast?
You were on the
40
verge.
minutes in, it's all of a sudden it's done?
Yeah.
It can't be.
They figured
and it
it
almost
out.
was
It
until
almost
Jerome
was.
Hunter stepped up.
Yeah.
I would say my favorite Xavier player that I have seen, that's tough.
So maybe it's not one that I've seen, but the person that I've interacted with, like who played here, who I can't get enough of is Romain Sato.
Yeah.
Like I think I've told this story before, but I've interviewed him a few times. He's come back. Like the last time he was back, he brought his whole family and he introduced me to his whole family. And I was sitting down in the media room writing a story and I thought they had left. And he sent one of his daughters back in to give me like a Christmas card. It was like near the holidays. And I was just like, that's such a perfect Romain Sato thing.
I'll go with JP. Maybe that's a cop-out answer, but we were in school together at the same time, so kind of being around that whole vibe of that team and just how fun that whole group was. Favorite game that I've seen in person, Two stick out to me. One is the Kunkel buzzer beater during COVID, just because of how absurd, bizarre that whole. And if you want to go back and listen, we just had Adam Kunkel on the OKG podcast this past week, and he talked about that. And it's just such a bizarre scene with nobody in the stands, nobody in attendance, and maybe 100 people.
Yeah.
But just how I remember after that game, and I said this on the show last week, that I remember after that game how somebody came up to me and said, that's a shot that would have lived in Xavier's history as an all-time moment in program history. And not that it isn't, not to take anything away from the shot, but having 10,000 people in here and what that would have been in as far as, shots that are replayed, I'm not sure how high that is on a lot of fans' lists, because you connect as a fan, you connect to those moments that you were there to see in person. And so many people couldn't experience that in person. They had to watch it on Fox or Fox Sports 1, whatever.
And that was his first ever Big East game.
It was.
He told us that on the, that's crazy.
It was. So I would say that, and then obviously the Xavier Villanova number 5, number 1 game back in 2016. It'll be hard for me as a freshman. I was a freshman that game. I was sitting down on the court capturing video. There's just nothing in my mind that it'll be very hard to come close to what that experience was like. Blue Demon Degenerate says, can you guys please say something nice about DePaul?
Yes, I would love to. I have an affection for people would always ask me, what's your favorite road trip in the Big East? And I think like the common answers are New York and Milwaukee's really cool. I love going to Wintrust Arena. I love the arena's awesome. There's something about the like where they sit us on the baseline. There's a student section right behind us, and the student section's really funny. Like you can hear everything they say. It's great. Yeah, shout out to Paul.
My answer was also going to be Wintrust Arena.
Me and Paul played one-on-one on the Wintrust Arena floor.
After shoot-around when we were up there a few weeks ago.
Paul got me.
Blue Demon Jijen, you have a beautiful, state-of-the-art new arena that someday soon will hopefully be the home of a competitive basketball team in the Big East.
It's coming. DePaul, it's coming.
Baum, I don't think we have anything else that I'm missing here. And if I did, if there are questions that I missed, I apologize. I tried to get to pretty much everything. Baum, is there anything else that you feel like we haven't addressed, questions we haven't gone to that you can remember?
Not really.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Josh, come over here. Come over here, Josh. We don't have a third microphone, but I'm going to have Josh get on camera, because this is the man behind the scenes. So to paint the picture, back in the first couple episodes, it was just me editing things.
Times were rough.
Times were rough around the Sean Miller podcast. And Adam and I went to Anthony Breen, who we haven't talked about on the show, but Anthony is kind of the mastermind behind all of this. So I'm very grateful to Anthony for giving me the opportunity, for hiring me for this, and to put a microphone in front of me and host this show. But I'm also thankful to Anthony for hiring Josh Sempsrott behind me, because Josh is a wizard. He does everything that you see on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those, the video components, anything visually that I publish and hit the send button on, it's Josh that's dropping it into the folder and giving it to me. So Josh, thank you. Here, take the microphone. Just say.
Thank you guys. I mean, just a little about me. I don't think I'll ever forget. It was Halloween night when Paul called me and explained what we were trying to do here, what we needed from a video standpoint, and I'll never forget like the look on my wife's face, just kind of like, is everything okay? And I'm like, this is it. This is the project to be like in such a storied program, get to document some of the things that go on in this building has been an indescribable experience.
Yeah,
so, and then we went right into Vegas.
Yeah, we did. You got thrown into the fire.
Right to Vegas.
What Paul didn't tell you when he called you that night was he had just spent the last 27 hours editing one video. And now we brought in someone, and God bless Paul. He gave it a go. He did his best, and he did a really good job. It was just like once you came on board, it's just been like rocket ship status.
Well, you guys make it easy. You guys do a great job.
Thank you.
I mean, I know this guy's like the memory bank on him is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that you've covered over the years, you guys make it easy and super fun. Coming to work every day is a blast.
Yeah. And I think like having Josh out here, I think it's a good place to wrap a bow on this. The fact that Paul said it at the beginning, we have 10,000 YouTube subscribers, you know?
And I can't, like that. That's just unfathomable to me.
And this all started with an idea, and you think of all the little things along the way that have had to happen. Like Sean had to be open to this. We needed someone like Paul in the mix who is like a badass broadcaster, knows podcasts in and out. We needed Josh involved. And then we needed like companies like Deer Park Roofing and TGE Solar and Payroll Partners to believe in us enough when we had no product to show them or sell them on, and they took a chance on us too, and we couldn't be more thankful for that.
And I don't think I'm going to get out of your guys' way and let you wrap this, but the one thing that like sticks out to me the most about just how the podcast has been received is the amount of Xavier students that, I don't think you guys even know this, that once I get done shooting the game, I go back up to where we did the podcast pregame show and tear all that down. The amount of students that thank us and love the podcast, and even after losses, that means a great deal to me as the producer, and it's just so cool to see how the students have embraced it, and all the comments that we get when we do the pregame show. People come up to us. It's great to have the support of the Xavier community.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, Josh, we appreciate it. Josh, a Cincinnati guy himself. He's from the area, been around the area. West Side guy. West Side guy. Yeah, I mean, just to wrap this up again, I mean, I appreciate you guys all giving me the opportunity, being able to be here, cover Xavier, met my fiance here at Xavier, everybody else that supported this to get to this point. And it to me, it was an 8-year journey from when I was a freshman in 2015 to being here in 2023 when I was hired, and now to live this through. That I can only hope that the trajectory is still onward and upward.
I've talked to you about trajectory quite a bit, Paul. We know this.
Adam, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
We've got, knock on wood, we've got a banger week coming. We've got like some good stuff in the hopper on the way. Now we need to hope that there are no unexpected hurdles. Because as I've come to learn in this podcast business, like, you can have a great plan, and sometimes it falls out the window.
I was telling Adam the other day, I spent the 2021 minor league season in AA for the AA team for the Orioles, and part of my job was coordinating interviews. Well, what you learn when you coordinate interviews is schedules can go awry and things can happen that maybe cause some people to, have something come up in whether it's games or practices or whatever it is, stuff happens on schedules, and that's just how it goes. And here we are.
I mean, currently my background wallpaper on my iPhone just says "Be optimistic," and that's been a product of trying to schedule this podcast. I need to remind myself. So,
well, I want to again say thanks to our producer Josh Sempsrott, whether it's capturing the video in the huddles or everything else that Josh has done. He's helped make this podcast as great visually as it has been. So thank you to Josh. Thank you to Anthony. Thanks to all our sponsors and everybody. And now at however many minutes we are into recording this, thank you all for listening to episode 19 of the Sean Miller Podcast. Hopefully it gave some good background on who we are, why you listen to this show, trying to convey that it's a couple of guys that appreciate being around this community and love talking basketball.
Yep.
So thanks to everybody for listening to this show. Barring any setbacks and barring any more scheduling conflicts, we have a fantastic episode coming for you next week. Hopefully Monday, as long as everything goes according to plan. This has been episode 19 of the Sean Miller Podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody.
This has been the Sean Miller Podcast, presented by Deer Park Roofing, with your hosts, Paul Fritchner and Adam Bound. Join us again soon for another episode with the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, Sean Miller.
Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Payroll Partners, where you're not just a number. That means providing a best-in-class HR and payroll experience that was built on award-winning technology and live support customer service with a dedicated payroll specialist who's just a phone call away. You shouldn't have to choose between technology and customer service. At Payroll Partners, you get both. Payroll Partners is locally owned and operated by a proud Xavier alum. Visit payrollpartners.net. That's payrollpartners.net. The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Deer Park Roofing, a company that's provided elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. Whether your needs are residential or commercial, like the outstanding work on the Cintas Center, the home of Xavier basketball, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is protect what's important, and what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com.